Many wars, such as the Revolutionary War, the Napoleonic War, and the War of 1812, helped to increase United States self-reliance. One way that the Revolutionary War caused the colonists to become more self-reliant is because it caused them to start manufacturing their own goods. As prices went up and trade with England stopped, Americans were forced to start making their own goods. More people figured out how to make in-demand items that had previously been supplied by Britain. In doing this, they learned to be capable of creating their own finished products as opposed to just the raw materials that they had been creating before. Thus, they didn't have to rely as heavily on England for these things, making them more self-reliant. Another way that the Revolutionary War caused the colonists to become more self-reliant is because it caused them to start an army. In the years before the Revolution, Americans were defended by British troops. When they went to war with England, they ended up fighting these same troops that used to defend them. So, they had to start their own army. This made them more dependent on each other and not any other country because they didn't have to rely on England for protection. Instead, they could stand up for themselves. This increased their self-reliance as they could now defend themselves against threats, independent of England's help. The third way that the Revolutionary War caused the colonists to become self-reliant is because it caused them to establish a government. Separation from England also cut them off from financial resources, so they established a government and the Annapolis Convention that let them tax and print money on their own to generate revenue and to be able to better regulate commerce. They could make their own decisions and create their own financial resources from within their own country. This furthered their independence from Britain and ability to take care of themselves. The Napoleonic War also caused the colonists to become self-reliant. One reason this is true is because it stimulated their economy. During the Napoleonic War, America's earnings tripled, and industry flourished, generating much more money for the country. This made them more self-reliant because it meant they could support themselves financially. It signals that they were developing the strategies and means, independent of other nations, to create a successful economy. Another way the Napoleonic War caused the colonists to become self-reliant is because it caused them to reach full employment. This helped the United States become more independent because it meant that they were growing a working class that could help them to be able to produce more and more over time. Instead of relying on foreign industry to bolster their economy, they could rely on their own industry and workforce. As they grew this working class during the Napoleonic Wars, they were likewise stabilizing their country from the inside. This made them more dependent on themselves and not anyone else because they were producing profit on their own and were relying on their own workers to do it, not on outside trader support. The third reason that the Napoleonic War caused the colonists to become self-reliant is because it made the Louisiana Purchase possible. France was in debt from the Napoleonic War, causing them to sell the Louisiana Territory to the United States. This gave the United States more land and opportunities to make money, and made them more independent because they could farm and produce more. This increased their wealth and diversified what they produced. Now, they could both farm in the New West and cultivate a strong manufacturing region in the East. This increased their self-reliance because it gave them a larger area to produce their own resources. The last reason that the Napoleonic War caused the United States to become more self-reliant is because it created the Embargo Act of 1807, or it caused it. During this war, England's increased need for boats caused them to seize more than 1,500 U.S. ships. So, President Jefferson enacted the Embargo of 1807, which prohibited all United States ships from trading in foreign ports. This would hopefully prevent them from being stolen as much. This meant that trade and export mostly ceased between the United States and other nations, such as France and Spain. This lack of foreign trade made the U.S. more dependent on themselves by pushing them to create their own stability without the use of trade with other nations. The War of 1812 also caused the colonists to become more self-reliant. For one, it caused their army to become much stronger. In the War of 1812, America had no allies as they fought against Britain. This made them grow dependent on their own army and not any other country's army for military strength. This war helped them build up military power and means of defense independently. In the end, the war came to a draw, cementing their now improved self-reliance in regards to their ability to defend themselves. Another way the War of 1812 caused the colonists to become self-reliant is because it caused them to gain control of 100 million acres of American Indian land. In the War of 1812, Native Americans allied with Britain. When the war ended, Britain abandoned their allies and left them in a weakened state and without protection, vulnerable to American armies. This made it possible for America to continue pressing west, thus increasing their territory considerably. This increase in land gave them more ability to do things to create a more stable life for themselves. They could move west freely and found new communities. This gain of land made them more independent because it gave them more opportunities for producing wealth. They could farm more and have more room to produce. It meant that there was nothing holding them back from further expansion other than themselves. The third way that the War of 1812 caused the colonists to become self-reliant is because it provided an enormous stimulus to American manufacturing. This happened because war with Britain cut them off from most importation and exportation. Not only did Britain blockade U.S. ports to forcibly prevent commerce, but they banned any trade with America. This low supply and high demand of goods caused the United States to further increase the amount and types of finished goods they produced, specifically textiles. Ultimately, the stimulus in manufacturing made them more independent because it meant that they didn't have to rely on other countries for making goods. They could just make it themselves. This further decreased their reliance and increased their self-reliance. All in all, the American Revolution, Napoleonic Wars, and War of 1812 hugely increased American self-reliance.